Here's an uncomfortable question. What if the wealth you think you have isn't actually real? Not fraud, not lying. I'm talking about something sneakier, a version of being rich that feels true on paper, but would completely collapse the moment something went wrong. This happens more than people realize. Someone looks financially successful from the outside. Nice house, nice car, good job. And yet, they're one missed paycheck away from serious trouble. Financial professionals actually have a term for this. It's sometimes called being asset rich, cash poor, or more bluntly, looking wealthy while being financially fragile. The scary part is that this can happen gradually, without any single moment where it becomes obvious. You don't wake up one day and realize your wealth is fake. It just quietly stays fragile year after year, while everything looks fine on the surface. Today, I'm walking through 5 specific warning signs that your wealth might be more fragile than it appears. Signs that even people with genuinely high incomes should pay attention to. Before we get into it, subscribe now. We break down exactly this kind of practical financial reality every week. No fluff. All right, let's find out if your wealth is actually as solid as it looks. Warning sign number 1. Your net worth is concentrated almost entirely in a single asset. For most people, this shows up as home equity. Your house has appreciated significantly, your net worth on paper looks impressive, and yet almost all of that value is locked inside one single illiquid asset. Here's why this is genuinely risky, even though it doesn't feel risky day to day. If that one asset drops in value, a housing market downturn, for example, a huge percentage of your entire net worth can shrink rapidly, with very little you can do about it in the short term. And even if the value holds steady, you still can't easily access it. You can't pay a medical bill with home equity without going through refinancing or a loan process, which takes time and often comes with costs. This same pattern shows up with business owners too. Someone whose entire net worth is tied up in their own company. On paper, they might be worth millions, but if that business ran into serious trouble or the industry shifted, that wealth could evaporate far faster than diversified wealth would. Financial professionals generally recommend that no single asset, outside of genuinely necessary things like your primary home, should represent an overwhelming majority of your net worth. When it does, your financial security is only as strong as that one asset's stability, which is a genuinely fragile position, even if the number on paper looks large. Warning sign number 2. If your income stopped tomorrow, you couldn't cover your basic expenses for even 3 months. This is one of the clearest, most practical tests of whether wealth is genuinely stable or just appears that way. Here's what makes this warning sign tricky. High earners often fail this test just as easily as low earners, sometimes more easily, because their monthly expenses have grown to match their income, which we've covered before as lifestyle creep. Someone earning $200,000 a year with $18,000 in monthly expenses and minimal liquid savings is actually in a more fragile position than someone earning $60,000 a year with modest expenses and a solid cash reserve. This is genuinely counterintuitive because the higher earner looks more financially secure from the outside. But if their income source disappeared, a job loss, a business downturn, they'd be in serious trouble far faster than the lower earner with lower expenses and actual savings. This warning sign isn't about how much you earn. It's specifically about the gap between your income and your accessible reserves. A large income with minimal reserves creates the appearance of wealth without the actual stability that real financial security requires. Warning sign number 3. Your monthly debt payments consume a large portion of your income, even if you're managing to make every payment on time. Here's why this matters, and why managing to pay on time isn't actually the full picture. Debt-to-income ratio measures how much of your monthly income goes toward debt payments, mortgage, car loans, credit cards, student loans combined. Many lenders consider a debt-to-income ratio above 36% to be a warning sign of financial strain, even when payments are being made consistently. Here's what happens at high debt-to-income ratios, even for people who never miss a payment. There's very little room for anything unexpected. A reduced income, an emergency expense, or a rate increase on variable debt can quickly turn a manageable situation into a genuinely difficult one, because so much of the monthly budget is already committed before anything else happens. Someone can have significant assets, a good job, and a comfortable-looking lifestyle, while simultaneously having a debt-to-income ratio that leaves them financially fragile the moment anything shifts. This is precisely the looks wealthy isn't actually stable pattern we're exploring in this video. Warning sign number 4. Your current lifestyle requires almost exactly your current income to sustain, with no meaningful buffer, either direction. This is closely related to lifestyle creep, but it's specifically about the structural risk this creates. Here's the practical problem. If your monthly expenses are $7,900 and your monthly income is $8,000, you have essentially no margin. Any reduction in income, even a modest one, immediately creates a deficit. This differs from having a high lifestyle. You can genuinely have an expensive lifestyle and still be financially stable if there's meaningful margin between what comes in and what goes out. The warning sign specifically is the absence of margin, regardless of the actual dollar amounts involved. A $200,000 income with $195,000 in expenses is structurally similar in fragility to a $50,000 income with $49,000 in expenses. Both have essentially no room for anything to go wrong. Real financial stability isn't measured by how much you make or spend. It's measured by the gap between the two and how much that gap could absorb if income dropped or expenses unexpectedly rose. Warning sign number 5. You've genuinely never sat down and asked, what would happen if my income stopped or a major expense hit unexpectedly? This might be the most revealing warning sign of all, because it's less about a specific number and more about whether you actually know your own vulnerability. Financial professionals sometimes call this stress testing, deliberately imagining a negative scenario and walking through exactly what would happen financially, step by step. Here's why avoiding this exercise is itself a red flag. If your financial situation were genuinely solid, walking through a stress test would be relatively reassuring. You'd see clearly that you have reserves, manageable debt, and real margin. But many people avoid this exercise specifically because some part of them suspects the answer might be uncomfortable, even if they haven't confirmed it directly. The habit of not stress testing your finances doesn't create fragility by itself, but it means fragility, if it exists, remains invisible and unaddressed, which is often worse than knowing clearly, because at least clear knowledge allows you to actually fix the problem before it becomes a crisis. So if these 5 signs point to fragile, fake-looking wealth, what does the opposite actually look like? Real financial stability tends to share a few consistent characteristics, regardless of the specific dollar amounts involved. First, diversification across multiple asset types, not having your entire net worth trapped in one single thing, whether that's a house, a business, or a single stock. Second, genuine liquid reserves, money that's actually accessible within days, not locked away requiring months of process to reach, sufficient to cover a meaningful stretch of expenses. Third, a healthy gap between income and expenses, not necessarily a huge gap, but a real one, providing actual margin for the unexpected. Fourth, a manageable debt-to-income ratio, one that leaves room for normal life fluctuations without immediately creating financial strain. Fifth, and maybe most importantly, actual clarity about your own numbers, achieved specifically by looking honestly at your situation rather than avoiding it. None of these require enormous wealth to achieve. Someone with a modest income who genuinely has these 5 characteristics is in a fundamentally more stable position than someone with a much higher income who lacks them. This is really the core insight of this entire video. The number on your net worth statement or your paycheck tells you far less about your actual financial stability than these underlying structural factors do. So here's what I want you to actually do after watching this. Go through these 5 signs honestly, one at a time. Not with judgment, just with genuine clarity. Is your net worth concentrated in one asset? Could you cover 3 months without income? Is your debt-to-income ratio quietly high? Does your lifestyle require your exact current income? Have you actually stress-tested your situation? If you recognized yourself in a few of these, that's genuinely okay. This isn't about shame. It's about visibility. You can't fix a structural weakness you haven't clearly identified. Real wealth isn't about how impressive things look from the outside. It's about how your finances would actually hold up if something unexpected happened. The goal isn't to feel bad about where you are. It's to know, clearly and honestly, exactly where you stand, so you can start building something genuinely solid instead of something that only looks solid until it's tested. See you in the next video.